Christian nationalism has obviously thrust Christian doctrine and dogma into the spotlight, especially during the past couple of months. Even if you typically don't pay attention to religious rhetoric in culture or in the media, you've no doubt been exposed to an abundance of it more recently, and it's likely caused you to maybe consider or wrestle with its message, who's on what side, what even are the sides, and where is all this leading us? Add to that, we've seen a slight uptick in younger generations affiliating with Christianity, kind of reversing the trend we've been seeing over the past couple of decades, where there's been a mass exodus from religion, or at least a lack of affiliation with any particular religion, notably Christianity. And today we're going to explore where Christian nationalism may lead us. Is it more toward Christian fundamentalism, or a more liberal and progressive Christianity, or maybe just a cultural Christianity, or somewhere in between, or none of the above? Because if there's one thing that's abundantly clear, Christians can't agree on exactly what Christianity is, nor how it should be expressed and practiced. I want to hear what you all think, and maybe I've got it backwards, where Christian nationalism isn't leading us anywhere, but rather we've been led to Christian nationalism by, say, Christian fundamentalism. So let's have a conversation. Hello again, my friends. It's good to see you. I'm H.G.Roberts, deconverted Christian after 25 years and author of On Monsters and Phantoms. And here we talk about religious trauma and how the Bible itself ties us up in knots. It leads to confusion, anxiety, fear, doubt, depression, emotional oblivion, mental paralysis, and ultimately, of course, trauma. I have a master's degree in mass communication, so I'm specifically interested in the messages that the Bible communicates to us today, the cognitive filters we use in our minds to interpret those messages, and finally, the harmful impact those messages have on ourselves and our worldview. So let's start here, and this relates to what I said in the intro related to witnessing an uptick in younger Americans embracing Christianity. You see, while younger Americans remain far less likely than older generations to identify as Christian, recent Pew and other data suggest that the long decline of Christianity in the U.S. may be slowing or stabilizing, with some evidence of renewed spiritual curiosity among millennials and Gen Z. And as you all likely know, Pew data shows that Christian affiliation has dropped sharply since 2007, but again, has leveled off in recent years, while the Barna Group reports rising personal commitment to Jesus and modest increases in church attendance among younger adults since 2021. These shifts seem to reflect spiritual re-engagement rather than a full return to organized religion or even denominational claims. Many young people remain skeptical of religious institutions, but still seek authenticity, community, and meaning, often expressing their faith in more personalized or non-traditional ways. Interestingly, as I was researching this video, Barna's homepage revealed this story. So the data right now are a bit fluid and inconclusive, and we can't spot a trend immediately. It takes time. We'll see where we're at in maybe 5 to 10 years from now, but overall the data show a nuanced picture. Christianity's dominance continues to wane, yet interest in Jesus and spiritual exploration among younger generations has grown slightly after years of decline. My question to you is this good or bad? And is there potential for Christian nationalism to seize this moment in younger people to indoctrinate them into its ideology? Is an interest in Jesus an open door to eventual organized religion and potentially Christian nationalism, which I know isn't an organized religion, but you get the point. But I want to zoom out a bit and tell you why these are important questions and discussion topics, and we're building off of what I said in my Charlie Kirk video and my Christian nationalism video. And of course, how religious trauma fits into all this. If you haven't seen either of those two videos, they are by far my two most popular, and they lay a foundation for this one. A culture that moves closer toward a specific ideology, where a majority begins to embrace that ideology, whether it's healthy or not, becomes less tolerant to its detractors. I've seen that firsthand through this channel based on the comments I get. Christian nationalism, which mixes some biblical doctrine and verses with traditionalism, xenophobia, militarism, and what I'd call patriotic bravado, seems to pride itself on its surety and its confidence. I mean, there's no doubt coming from the rhetoric of Christian nationalists. The message is that it's right, it's good, it's necessary, and it will restore America to something greater by reverting to a past that wasn't always so great. The message isn't meek and humble, it's raucous and loud. It's less soothing string orchestra and more trumpet blast and pyrotechnics. It's intolerant and absolute. And as the Christian nationalist rhetoric spills into the nooks and crannies of America, it could potentially drown out counter messages, or at least alternative ones. Based on what I've seen from certain members of national leadership, the door for mutual respectful dialogue and exchange, especially around religious belief, seems to be closing a little bit. The pundits of Christian nationalism proudly proclaim that we must return to traditional Christian values to root out our nation's darkness. And this darkness extends beyond criminal activity, of course, into lifestyle choices, cultural practices, and religious beliefs deemed sinful by some. There's a quickening to homogenize the culture, to steer the rhetoric and ideas in a specific biblical direction, and to demonize and villainize those who don't play along. Personally, I'd prefer not to return to a more genocidal and slave-oriented culture that subjugates women, and I enjoy the freedom I have to speak out against harmful religion, but I digress. So, we now circle back to where we started. Where will Christian nationalism lead us? And this is a question for you all. Maybe Christian nationalism is a fork in the road for America. Is it possible that Christian nationalism could lead to a resurgence of liberal Christianity? As some define it, the more palatable, charitable, progressive, tolerant, feel-good, cultural love fest, social justice, Jesus-centric Christianity. C.J. Cornthwaite just did this video that well defines liberal Christianity, and I like how he frames it. Or could it lead to more cultural Christianity that even Richard Dawkins said he could embrace? The Starbucks brand of Christianity, as some have called it. I call it greeting card Christianity. Simply defined, cultural Christianity refers to identifying as Christian primarily because of one's upbringing, heritage, or social environment, not necessarily because of their personal faith, belief, or religious practice. In other words, a cultural Christian may celebrate Christian holidays, hold generally Christian moral values, and we could argue those all day, or see Christianity as part of their national or family identity, but they may not actively follow Jesus' teachings, attend church regularly, or consider their faith central to daily life. I'd argue that cultural Christians are also not very familiar with the Bible. Sociologists often describe cultural Christianity as a social identity rather than a spiritual conviction, a way of belonging to a cultural tradition rather than a devout religious environment. Or could we make the case that Christian nationalism is a bridge to Christian fundamentalism or even extremism, which is the world I came from, a more conservative and restrictive world where the Bible is read literally, where both Yahweh and Jesus play a central role in defining morality, where repentance, wrath, judgment, punishment, and consequence weigh more heavily. As a reminder, fundamentalism emerged as a reaction against theological liberalism and the rise of modern science, such as evolutionary theory. Fundamental Christians typically affirm beliefs like the inerrancy of Scripture, the virgin birth and divinity of Jesus, the atoning death and resurrection of Christ, and the second coming. In practice, fundamental Christianity is often marked by strict moral codes and separation from secular culture. So, I kind of see Christian nationalism here in the murky middle space as an ideology without a real home or identity, one which could evolve or morph into one of three paths I just described. You got liberal Christianity, cultural Christianity, or fundamental Christianity. Or does Christian nationalism lead us somewhere different, like to, say, Christian orthodoxy, perhaps? Or none of the above? Or is Christian nationalism its own brand of Christianity, or maybe a brand that borrows from those other strands? Tell me what you think. What's a most likely scenario. Does Christian nationalism make people go, you know what? No, okay, I can get on board with the love and social justice Jesus supposedly taught us, and thus it fuels a rise in liberal Christianity, a perhaps less dangerous and harmful and more tolerant and inclusive version of this belief system, though that's another thing we can argue in a later video? Or as people become exposed to a Christian nationalist message, will it lead a majority into embracing fundamentalism and doubling down on, well, perhaps the less palatable ideas found in that branch of Christianity, a more militant and less tolerable, less inclusive brand of Christianity? Or will we see a rise in the more ambiguous social identity of cultural Christianity? I'm very curious, but also concerned because of what my channel is all about: religious trauma. Which version of Christianity allows for thoughtful discussion and acceptance of the reality of religious trauma? Which version leaves room for that reality and is sensitive to it? Which one most seeks to understand it? I have my guesses, but I want to hear yours. In what religious social construct are people like me invited to the table to share our experiences and our stories, such that there's legitimate discussion about implementing reforms to prevent or curb religious trauma from overwhelming others, including children? In what religious construct are people like me taken seriously? In what religious or social construct can meaningful exchange around how we speak about religious trauma and indoctrinate children with religion take place? What does a society look like that is receptive to my message and doesn't marginalize or dismiss people with religious trauma, but rather listens to and learns from those who have experienced it? And then what? How do we grow from there? That's the world I'm after. Not a world that completely abolishes religious belief and practice, but one that recognizes and leaves room for the reality that religion can and does harm many people. So the way we speak about it and practice it should be, and this is a dirty word, I know, regulated. Obviously, America is a country that will not regulate the practice of religion, but can we find a way to protect people from being harmed by it? This is the mission of my channel. My wife still loves, embraces, practices, and celebrates her Christianity, which leans more toward the fundamental side. For her, it's beautiful. It works. It stabilizes her. Same for other members of my family. We talk about these issues frequently, how Christianity works so well for some, but damages others. And again, my channel zeroes in on those answers. So as we navigate what we're becoming as a nation, let's keep the conversation about religious trauma front and center. Let's make sure that the religiously traumatized people hiding in the shadows, and trust me, there are more than you think, and you'd be surprised to know that you may know some of them, but boy, do they keep up the facade publicly. I'm speaking from experience. Let's make sure they have a voice. Again, not to abolish, but to raise awareness and reform how we position religion in our culture. If Christian nationalism threatens to dominate America and thus silence the discussion around religious trauma, let's make sure it doesn't. I've posted just under 90 videos on my channel since January. I love hearing from you guys. I love hearing your thoughts on all of them, but I really want to hear your perspectives on this one. This is a timely, critical, and relevant conversation given where we're at as a nation. Let's seize the moment to have our voices heard. Share this video. Get others talking about it. I appreciate that, not for my sake, but for the millions around the world still suffering in silence because of religious trauma. They need us to not stay silent. Their lives depend on it. Thanks for being here, everyone. If you want to support this channel, you guys know what to do. Please like, subscribe, share, comment, and don't forget to turn on notifications so you don't miss my next conversation starter. But a way to support the channel financially, since I don't have Patreons or sponsors, is to do what many others have done and purchase On Monsters and Fandoms. It's my memoir about severe religious trauma and deconversion from Christianity, and leave me a review. It's a raw and honest look into the diabolically harmful mind games Christianity plays with us. The link to it on Amazon is below. I appreciate that. And if you do buy it, let me know via email in addition to a comment so I can publicly thank you in my next video. It would be my pleasure to do that. So look for new videos each Wednesday and Sunday morning at 7 a.m. Eastern Time, where we take a deep dive into what religious trauma is, how it forms, in whom it's most likely to form, and what we can do about it if it does form. If you'd like me to cover a specific topic, let me know in the comments. And if you're new here and curious about religious trauma or think you may be suffering from it, first of all, welcome to the channel. Then explore it to see what other topics I've covered and what resources are available to you. And until next time, let's continue to catalyze a conversation together about religious trauma to let those who suffer from it know that there's hope and to let those who dismiss it know that it's real.